Hi guys, this is Rick. This interview is not new, but it is extraordinary. This is why I wanted to share it with you. This POW is actually the only one who earned my respect, and you'll understand why. This dub is almost 2 hours long, and this is why it took me so long. Sorry for that. All rights belong to Zolkin, Karpenko, and their team. Please enjoy.
Has the recording started? Yes, it has. I hope it doesn't look like me exploiting you in captivity. No. I asked the captive to press record. It's not related to the category of jobs. Do you know that officially prisoners of war must work? Yes, I've read about the rights and responsibilities of prisoners of war. Wow, impressive. When I was held in a pre-trial detention center. Well, it's unexpected. Please introduce yourself. My name is Vasiliev Maxim Stanislavovich. I was born in the city of Saratov. I served in the Belgorod region, Valuki village. Oh, to be exact, Valuki district, the village of Solity. Date of birth, 10th of April, year 2000. Well, it's not an interrogation, it's a conversation. We'll talk about all these things. It will be an interesting story, probably for the first time shown as it is. Tell me how you served. Well, I started serving in 2021, from October. First month, respectively, it was a basic training like for any conscript. Well, at least it used to be so. I don't know how it happens these days. First month of the basic training, we were not allowed to go anywhere from the barracks. We were always on the same floor, in the same barracks, 80 people. That's how my service started, and then business trips began. My first business trip, right after the basic training, was to headquarters. Headquarters of the 20th Army of Voronezh, where we carried out the guard duty. My service was pretty varied. It was HQ service. What was your position? I'm a shooter, grenade launcher assistant, but I had many other job titles. So in your military ID you had a single position? No, there were many job titles listed there, but that one was the last. And what were all the jobs you had? Machine gunner, aimer, and many other positions that weren't taken into account. All that I was taught. And were you really trained for these specialties? For the aimer position, together with the guy who just finished his training, we climbed into APC. And he explained the basics to me, how it starts, how I need to work with it. That's how they taught me. Have you been shooting? Well, personally, I haven't, but I was able to fire only 2 bullets from a 30, that's it, and nothing like I took part in fighting. From a 30 means what? 30mm cannon. Got it. I'm gonna check if you fit into the shot, you're pretty tall. Yep, you fit. Our method is amateur, but simple and mobile. Okay, got it. So it was 2021, and until... Have you participated in military training? I didn't get a single training, because I was always in HQ, and I also have some health complications. This is why I've spent 3 months of service in a hospital with a skin disease. Let's restore the chronology then. When were you summoned? October 19th, 2021. That's when I received the summons. And on the 21st of October 2021, I arrived at the military unit. So, on the 10th of October 2021, well, 19th of October. On the 19th of October 2021, you arrived at the military unit. No, that's when I just got the summons at home. I see. When did you actually enter the military unit? On the 21st of October 2021. 2021. You spent 3 months in a hospital. What was the reason? Well, these 3 months were spread out throughout my service. I have skin disease, allergic dermatitis. So people with allergies also serve. But how? Can you serve with allergies? Yes, you can. Well, for me, is it officially allowed, or did they just say you're healthy? They classified me as B3. That's one of the worst health categories. There's also before, but that's with severe complications. They determined that I have allergies to all kinds of dust and still sent me to serve. All kinds of dust. Yes. For 3 months, you... When were you discharged from the hospital? Well, I periodically went there when complications arose. Complications, you went there, they treated you... Yes, for a month. They removed everything, I was healthy for a month, then complications again, and so on in the cycle. I see. On the 24th of February, are you a contract soldier? No, I'm a conscript. I'm currently a conscript. You're a conscript. You have a 1-year conscription? Yes. When was it supposed to end for you? It was supposed to end tomorrow. And didn't I tell you it would be an interesting story? But it's only the beginning. I add some artistic things, because people on the channel have watched so many stories, lives, fates. But your story, I know not the whole truth, but a small piece. I was given a little. Tomorrow, a person's conscription service was supposed to end. He didn't sign a contract, right? No, and there was never any motivation. I'm not a military person. How do you want to spend tomorrow? I don't know. Go home? I don't even know if I'm... In different circumstances, yes, but what if there was a chance tomorrow? Spoiler alert. What if there was a chance to leave the walls of the pre-trial detention center tomorrow? Well, at least just take a walk. I've always wanted to visit this city. I joined the army with the goal of getting a foreign passport. We don't have the opportunity to leave the country after turning 18 without completing compulsory military service. Wow, nobody told us that. If you haven't served in the army, you won't be issued a foreign passport. Yes, because a request will be made to the draft board. It can be done differently, a fax, a phone call, doesn't matter. Yes, they will make a request, where they will access the archive and check your personal file. And practically every young person in our country is put on the military register since the school. And if it turns out that, for example, if I turned 21 and went to apply for a foreign passport, and they found out that I'm a draft dodger, and accordingly, for this, we already have an article. So, one of the hooks for keeping people under control is the refusal to issue documents. You're the first one out of 450 people to talk about this, but I'll make it a little easier for you. Out of those we interviewed, only about 5 people have been abroad. I mean... Well, it's a big... Well, I'll tell you. In our country, it's considered almost a privilege. The opportunity to go abroad is a sign of high status. You're from Saratov, right? Yes, I'm from Saratov. Is Saratov a big city? Yes, it's a regional center of Saratov Oblast. Well, there's... How big is the population? Almost 1 million. Wow, 1 million. Yes, cool. And there's... So even for Saratov, traveling abroad is almost like a holiday? Well, you see, if the average salary is around 20,000, no one will have enough money to travel abroad. That's in principle the average standard of living in the country. Got it. It will be interesting. We will talk about many things. So I'm concluding that you joined the army so that you could have the opportunity to leave the country. To leave the country. Yes, at least to get a job. Because when they see that a candidate for a position doesn't have a military ID, the candidacy is immediately rejected. So in Russia, without a military ID, you're nobody. Yes. No job. You'll get nothing. No prospects. For a young person, no prospects at all. In any case, you have to go run with a gun. Yes, paint the grass. Well, we already knew that, but nobody has ever told us so openly about it. But it's cool. Where did you want to go? I actually wanted to go to Ukraine. Why Ukraine? Well, it's historical for me. I like to be on the internet, play games. And I have quite a few acquaintances in Ukraine, through internet communication, even some joint projects. I have a mentor, a programming tutor. I'm a system administrator by education, and I wanted to reclassify as a programmer. He's Ukrainian. By education? When did you go to serve and how? I went to serve in October. In October 2021, but I haven't finished secondary vocational education in the field of information systems. I didn't finish it because I also had to work, a low-skilled labor. I've been working since I was 16, renting apartments, and I couldn't manage everything. You're 22 years old. Yes. Yes, that's correct. You mentioned education, programmer. What language do you code on? Well, I understand it. I started with Java, then I chose C# for myself. For Windows? No, Unity. Oh, I see. I've chosen myself a development environment to make games. C# is just an unusual choice. Well, I'm familiar with these topics. Before the war, we talked for a few minutes before the interview. You haven't been to Ukraine before, of course. No. And you don't have any friends you know personally here. There are people I've been communicating with for 3 years through the internet, video calls, that's it. I've seen them personally through video calls, and we've spent many hours together. I don't know if you can call that knowing personally. Well, close relationships. Yes, close enough. Yes, and why Ukraine? Why did you want to go here instead of Europe or the US? Well, there's a completely different language and environment there. I knew even before that there's no oppression of Russian language in Ukraine, as they say on TV. I understood that Ukraine lives better than Russia. How does it live better? Well, for one, the average salary in Ukraine, as I know, is much higher. I discussed this with many residents of Ukraine, also through the internet. And I came to the conclusion that Kyiv would be an ideal place for me, where with my education and abilities I could achieve something. You just shattered the Russian propaganda narrative. I knew that there's no problem with languages in Ukraine. Did you communicate with your friends in Russian? In Russian, yes? And were there people who communicated in Ukrainian? Well, there were, but only among themselves. Everyone respected me. I joined the call, and the entire conversation switched to Russian. You see, we have a bonus here. Everyone knows at least 2 languages. Someone knows 3, 4, someone like me knows 7 languages. I'm kidding. It's 2.5 with a dictionary. You chose Ukraine. Tell me about February 24th, 2022. On February 24th, I was in a hospital room. I had an ear infection caused by allergic dermatitis. So, some staff gathered in my ear. Well, okay, you were in the hospital. Yes, I was in the hospital. I learned about the war not from my fellow soldiers or my parents. My friends from Ukraine immediately started messaging me. They started telling me, showing me what was happening. At first, honestly, it was hard to believe. They started sending a lot of photos, videos, right? Videos, yes, all of that. I was actually shocked. How did you answer the question, what's happening? Among us, even among the conscripts, there were talks, but at the level of Elephant FM. You know, just some rumors. There were talks about some preparations being made, some anti-aircraft systems being deployed, but people thought that, well, it's unlikely, it's hardly possible. Then propaganda started pouring in from all the cracks. The entire information field started to be absorbed. I remember they immediately started telling us stories about, how should I put it? In general, about, I'll call things by their names, about Ukronazis. Yes, that's normal, fascists. I'm the same, I'm quite a banderite myself. So what were they saying? They were talking about, you can use obscene language. Okay. We're on YouTube. If you want to call anything by its name, go ahead. They immediately started saying that Ukrainians use their own people as human shield. All our failures were immediately justified by the fact that we don't want to harm civilians. Although I remember, as one of my acquaintances was showing me the videos of our missiles hitting civilian areas, residential buildings. I mean, this was when you were already in the unit. I was still in the hospital. I was in the hospital until the 3rd of March. Ah, and your heroes were already sending you videos like, look how we are dealing with holes there. Yes, and at first they were talking about Kiev in 3 days. I remember it well. What were they saying? They were saying they would seize Ukraine in 3 days. We have such... Did they take it? No. Where are you now? I'm currently in... Well, by my own choice, yes. Actually, I'm even glad that I got into Ukraine. Yes, I got into Ukraine. I wanted it for a long time. Well, we'll get to that. It will be very interesting, I assure you. Yeah, and what did they boast about how they were destroying? I can say that none of my fellow soldiers sent any messages, because they took away all their phones and other means of communication. As later told by those who returned from there, thankfully alive, they asked regular Ukrainian civilians for a chance to call their moms, dads, to inform them about the problems that they faced. They sent all the conscripts by deception. They said they were going to the training ground Severny. It's a training ground near our unit in Solity village. I'll make one more remark. Our military unit was one of the first to enter Ukraine, the first 2 columns. Considering that you, spoiler, considering that you recently ended up in Ukraine, let's put it that way. It was recently. How many people were in the unit at the beginning and at the end? I can't say about the beginning. Well, give or take. According to rumors, the garrison is supposed to have 1,600 people. Yes, beds. Now there are more, much more. Because of the mobilization. When they sent you, or rather when you left, you'll tell me about this, were there 1,000 people? Standing on the parade ground, I felt like there were fewer than 1,000 people, much fewer. Did you have friends who became 200? Yes, many. Even one guy from Atkarsk. I lived in Atkarsk myself. I was drafted from there, and that fellow countryman of mine was killed in the first hours. From my platoon, in the first hours of the 24th. Yes, yes. By the 25th, it was already known that he had died. There was just a problem. Did they bring back the body? With the delivery of the body. Yes, they said the body was returned. Then I called his mother. They tried to open the coffin. They brought him in a zinc coffin. As rumors say, there was no body inside, for some reason. You won't surprise me, because we know about mobile crematoriums that were... You have the entire groups that travel around the front lines and burn the bodies of your fighters. Do you know why? No? Let's think about it. I assume the compensations, well, you see, most likely to hide the killings, death. It's interesting to talk to a person who works with a keyboard, especially a programmer. He has logical thinking, he can think. Exactly, no body, no case, no money. Yes, you have groups moving around.
We have prisoners who talked about this in interviews. How they retrieve bodies in the crematoriums. These crematoriums are not a fantasy. They are mobile furnaces for burning garbage. So, instead of transporting garbage, a furnace comes and burns it right there. You make them, these furnaces. They are of your production. But for bodies, I assume the temperature is higher. Then even bones turn into ashes. So you didn't surprise me. There are already thousands of stories where they open zinc coffins and there is no one inside. I'm just that kind of person. I've learned one thing. If you don't see it personally, it's better not to believe it. Until you see it, touch it. Why do 99% of Russian citizens believe all the nonsense that pours out of the television? This is something I've been asking myself, even while being in detention center. What's wrong? What answers do you have? Well, you know, I even used to argue with people about it. I tried to argue with them that things are not as they say on our TV. Who did you argue with? I used to argue with my father. It was pointless. And what about your father? My father, he just painted a picture that Ukraine is a NATO accomplice and that everything that happens is on NATO orders, that there is an incredible number of mercenaries here. It's so what? And he paints this picture for himself. Look, that's his position, and theoretically he has the right. I understand that he has. But I usually have a simple question. What business is it of your father's, or of all of Russia, what's happening here? Well, basic question. I have a certain opinion that it's to distract people from real problems. Since 2014, during the whole 8 years, the same topic has been constantly broadcasted. Ukraine. To do what? To distract from internal problems in the country. Logic. So this interview won't be standard. I won't need to prove anything here, because this person understands everything. Again, having logical thinking, basic knowledge, plus access to the internet, plus he fills in all those gaps and fairy tales. You have so many problems in Russia. Your country sells gas to the whole world, but half of your country, wait, 80% of the population is not even gasified. So what are we talking about? You could have been Dubai number 2. Yes, we got distracted. 200s arrived at the unit. Oh, did you return from the hospital in March? Yes. What was the situation like in the unit when you went there? I witnessed the first wave of conscripts from Luhansk and Donetsk. As far as I understand, the first wave consisted of citizens from those republics. Those are not republics, that's how they are called there. I don't even know how else to name them. Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Yes, Donetsk and Luhansk regions. These are the parts of Ukraine that Russists have occupied. If we call everything by its proper names, that's how it's happening. Well, and how it's called. I saw a whole lot of equipment taken out. I've never seen so much equipment in a unit before. Let me clarify. They brought conscripts from Donetsk and Luhansk to your unit, where you dressed them up. Yes, we issued them weapons, and then you sent them back. Yes. And what happened next? My daily routine was, all the conscripts were sent to do cargo handling, unloading weapons, ammunition. In principle, there were hardly any people in the unit. It was practically totally empty. Everyone was at war, and those who remained were hauling boxes. Hauling boxes, yes, from the wagons somewhere in the warehouse. Do you still have a lot of this junk? An incredible amount. They keep bringing it, bringing and bringing. You mean rockets, ammunition? Yes.
We keep waiting for it to run out on your end. I think there's still an enormous amount in storage. No, that's where I'd argue many prisoners who operated MLRS, GRAD and others have said that there have been shortages since August. Before August or September, they could shoot as much as they wanted and whatever they wanted. Then, after that, the supplies came once every 3-5 days, and they were bringing not a truckload of supplies, just a couple of boxes, and the rockets already had damaged wings, and they had to sit there and fix them. And accordingly, they started shooting less. There are probably plenty of rounds, as they are easy to manufacture, but problems with rockets started to appear. That's quite understandable. In general, we have problems with management in the army, just as in the whole country. It's an enormous country that no one really needs. There are certain regions, even our region has such issues. The Western, I'm a former soldier of the Western military district. For example, it is considered one of the shittiest districts. Why? Well, supply and management issues, and generally, the discipline in the district is awful. If, let's say, we have a southern military district which hasn't been involved in this war yet. It has been already involved? Yes, they are even involved from Idrup Island. Do you know it? No, but they are probably used as attached personnel. From there, they're already taking out soldiers and contractors. From Idrup Island, it's 9,000 kilometers away. Japan, those are disputed islands. Japan, there are no people left there. One special forces guy, some ninja, can come and take the island. I'm reminding you. Konnichiwa. I'm not up to date on the latest news because there's no internet. But as my recent fellow prisoners said, the southern district is still not involved. But maybe they themselves don't know everything. Well, it's normal for you. So, all summer you were hauling boxes. During the summer, I ended up going to work in the headquarters. I was never involved in hauling boxes. I immediately understood, and you can see it in my correspondence with my friends, but I don't have my phone now. I expressed my thoughts openly then, not afraid that someone would learn about my views on it. I understood who this ammunition would be shot at. I left there as quickly as I could. So, by hook or by crook, I managed to get a position in the headquarters, and what position was it? A clerk, working with documents. Did you issue death notices? No, that was handled by other departments. We had a soldier in the interview who filled out notices of deceased personnel. I knew one of those who handled it in our unit. What did he tell you? Oh, he's a person with a certain worldview. I would call him slick. As he put it, oh, these damn 200s again. All of this, no beer time, work again, right? Yes, work again, and they don't give much opportunity to drink beer, he said. Did he say how many? Well, they worked quite a lot, were overtime, and it was clear from his comments that there was a lot of work. One prisoner told us he filled out death notices, funerals as they called them. He participated with an officer in its delivery. He shared stories about how they tried to kill them. The stories were like that. Some of them fainted. It is such work. Yes, and you were in the headquarters. Battalion headquarters, to be precise. Let's say Battalion HQ. What did you do there? I did everything in the HQ. There were reports. The day started like this. We had AWOL cases, absent without official leave, and corresponding reports for them. Were there many of them? Many. People ran away or... Yes, they deserted the military unit, ran away, left. You had an interesting job. Come on, we haven't had this before. There was even one officer, a senior lieutenant, who didn't leave the service. I tried to find out. They called him... He didn't want to. Didn't come to the service? Yes, he just didn't show up for duty. They called him and stuff. Yes, they filed a report against him for being AWOL. AWOL? Ah, I see. And then what? As far as I understood, a criminal case was initiated against him. The prosecutor's office took up the matter. When about 10 reports are accumulated, they are all getting registered and archived. And against these people, due to the severity of their crime, they started, I see, various procedural things. You said every morning started with these AWOL cases. Yes. What, every night someone would run away? It turns out there was a list of certain individuals. I had a board there, I wrote down who was AWOL at the moment, and prepared a batch of reports for them. Sometimes in a day, at first there was a small batch, like 3 people a day, 3 people every day. Yes, and then, as long as the person was absent, I had to submit reports for them to the regimental HQ every day, indefinitely. And then this number, just to clarify, I'm curious myself. For example, on Monday, Pupkin is absent. On Monday, there's a report on Monday. On Tuesday, Pupkin is still absent, so on Tuesday there's another one, that he's absent from a certain date. Yes. What's the point of doing that? To register it. Every day, if there's no paperwork, then we have some kind of obsession with paperwork. If a person is absent for 20 days, does that mean 20 reports? Yes. Why can't they just take the first and the last days? Were there those who was returned? There were those on AWOL cases. There were those who returned on their own. I knew one personally. I wrote a report on him. Why did he return? He returned from Ukraine. He was a contract soldier. He returned from Ukraine and told them, "You can all go fuck yourselves." When was that? It was February, March. He returned in April, he told the command. Was he in the first wave? In the first wave, he was entering Ukraine with our conscripts. Yes. He said, "You can all go fuck yourselves," and then he disappeared for 2 months. They found him, Etta boy. Not Etta. They found him, yes. He didn't hide well enough, but Etta boy. They found him, and then what? They found him, brought him back. His position was... He just wrote it like that, I read it. He later gave me the documents, the protocol from his case. He just wrote, "I wanted to take a break." He knew about the consequences. They dismissed him from his contract, and now he's a conscript soldier. I don't know how his fate will unfold, but he had such a plan to complete his conscript service. He received 3 million for his injury to complete his service. They paid him. Yes, they paid him. And then return home. That was his plan. In short, finish with military affairs. Yes, but it didn't work out. No, it didn't, due to recent events. I see. What kind of injury did he have? Shrapnel wound in his arm. Well, at least he got the money. And how many at the peak? Is it the only case when they brought the person back? Regarding everyone who was on that list, I personally saw all of them in the unit when the investigations started. After the prosecutor's office and military police got involved, so they caught all of them. Yes, they caught all of them. And how many were there at the peak of AWOL cases? Almost 17 people, but it's only in my battalion. Not the whole unit. It's just my whole battalion. And the battalion is 300 people, right? Yes, 300, around 340. Around that. Well, that's the normal number. And they would sometimes replace each other. I mean, did you at least type the reports on the computer? Yes, of course. Because, you know, we heard other stories. Yeah, I saw people who wrote all the reports by hand, with a ruler. Yeah, I had some like that. Second Army in the world. Do you know that you're representing the Second Army in the world? Yes, I've heard. Why do you have why such a skeptical attitude towards your own army? Towards my army? It could be the Second Army in the world if at least 50% of the budget that was spent on this army actually went to this army. not to someone's yachts, summer cottages. People in the unit, what did they say? In the summer, closer to the X moment. In the beginning, everyone, one thing I enjoyed. Let me check the recording. I'm just alone today. Is it going? Yes, it is. The one thing that I enjoyed is that in the beginning, for the first 2 months, everyone started to stick together. I saw it for the first time. Let me tell you the story from basic training. It turned out that we got mixed up, Russians and Dagestanis. Among the Russians there were also Kazakhs and others, but the Dagestanis are like a separate caste in our unit. We have a division into Dagi. Yeah, an ethnic division in our unit. Dagestanis, Tuvinians, machine gunner fixed the machine gun. Well, it's just that all the Russian idiots write that you give the interviews at gunpoint. Alright, got it. How many of us are here? 44 machine gunners and 2 of us? Yeah, alright. Did I force you to talk to me? No, I'm personally sharing what I want, what I've seen, because I'm sure that most people still don't understand. I read the internet and see that people still don't understand what's happening. No, well, many are turning around. It affected them when their son or father was taken away from the family. Then everyone starts to show a little interest in politics, because that's your main slogan. I'm not interested in politics. Outside of politics, yes, we have such a problem. But as soon as they took away someone, suddenly politics became interesting. They go on the internet, fill out surveys, bots start working, hundreds of 200 photos are scrolled through to see. Because there's no connection. Your second army in the world has no connection. They take away phones and you're disconnected. And if a 200 comes to the house unexpectedly, the whole house starts to think, how did this happen? That's how it happens. Anyway, back to the story. We literally had 28 people. Imagine 56 conditionally Russians and 28 Dagestanis. And Dagestanis were catching and bullying us one by one. Nobody wanted to unite. They were just beating us the fuck up. I'm not surprised. I mean, and I prepared a question about hazing for later, but if you touched on this topic yourself, then tell me. So, they literally caught them one by one, beat them the fuck up. They lined us up as they wanted, as they needed. And here's what I noticed in the first 2 months of this conflict. War. War, yes. Oh my, we started to unite. Can you imagine? We started together in one room to think about something, to discuss things. I mean, not just like, I don't give a fuck, it won't affect me. I really started to believe that it's not over yet. What did you discuss? We discussed 200s. That was the most news were coming in. At that time, we still had our conscript comrades. The last ones were taken away, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of April. The last of our comrades, the ones I served with, the ones I even started my service with, and we primarily discussed the 200s. How did you discuss them? Since I was in the headquarters, I had access to the entire roster of our regiment. I had lists of all the servicemen and their positions, and... Wait a second. The machine gunner came in, needed to replace the first one. That machine gunner had different tasks. I had their positions correspondingly. There was a way to keep track. What I liked was that when someone died, they were removed from the roster. So I could, if we didn't receive some information, I could find out through the regiment whether this person was alive or not. Because if he died and the regiment knew about it before my comrades did, he would be removed from the roster. And you concluded by comparing that, yes, and were there many 200s? Yes, many. In numbers, give or take. I remember we once decided to compare surnames. We remembered that Sampupkin was in the 2nd platoon. I know him, know in which section, in which squad. Let's check on him. And we counted almost a whole platoon deceased in the regiment. In the battalion, we have 1/3 of a battalion. We had 3 battalions at that time, and a separate... 3 battalions are 9 platoons. Yes, it's 9 platoons, but you see, in the battalion there's also a separate anti-tank platoon, those mortar units and a few other units. And there were situations when we couldn't account for an entire platoon. Can it be said that your special military operation, war in our language, reduced your regiment by 1/3, grinded 1/3 of it? Even more than that already. It's only killed, and there's also a huge number of wounded. You see, the thing is, they say the battalion no longer exists. If there's more than 70% casualties, the battalion no longer exists. Did such situations occur? Yes, such situations occurred. But the thing is, the battalion continues to exist. They assign new commanders. They bring new commanders, attaching them from different places. And they just fill it with volunteers, now with conscripts, I'm sure. You can destroy an entire regiment, steal its banner, and they'll bring a new banner, get officers from somewhere, and fill it with volunteers and conscripts. Cool. Well, not actually cool, but that's when everyone started getting interested in politics. So you discussed the 200s. What else did you discuss? We discussed us then. Well, let me tell you more. I was a contract soldier, but... Did I start the recording? Yes, I was a contract soldier, but not by my own will. Alright, let's sort it out. Are you a contract soldier or a conscript? Here's a very interesting story about this. I'm sure you've heard it, because if conscripts... I can name 10 versions off the top of my head. If conscript soldiers were interviewed by you, then they were. Then you did hear about it. Of course. Who was agitating? Not agitating. It turns out, while I was in the hospital, I found out through a friend of mine, through a messenger, that they made me a contract soldier. It was done for such purpose. On the 16th of February, personally for me, they signed a contract. At that time, I was already in the hospital. So I didn't see any paperwork, didn't collect any documents, I didn't even express my verbal desire. I mean, on the 3rd of February, I went to the hospital, and on the 16th of February, I became a contract soldier. While in the hospital. Can I say that in your unit, they made all conscripts contract soldiers? Yes, they made all conscripts into contract soldiers. No one told us that, but considering you were an HQ conscript and also a contract soldier, why didn't you bring up this issue when you returned to the unit? We started bringing it up. We gathered precisely for this reason. They lined us up on the parade ground, and some officer from the division, a captain, major, senior lieutenant, came up and asked, "Why aren't you fulfilling your military duty?" Or, "Why aren't you engaged in special military operation?" So in such a way, they were pressuring us to go. So I asked, who agitated you? No one agitated us to go on contract. I see, but for the special operation. For the special operation they did, because they thought, well, more accurately, I understand that everyone knew everything, but they thought we were real contract soldiers. They came out with a list of contract soldiers. Oh, Vasilyev, so why aren't you on a special military operation? And did you say that? I said, yes, of course, immediately. We were all gathering together and forming the shield defense. We're conscripts. What the fuck? I mean, and they were getting off you. Yes, for a while. Yes, until the next formation. We had a conscript tell us once how a major general came. There were 4 conscripts left from the secret ensured a regime unit. Those move-in Iskander missiles, they took everyone out of there. There were 4 soldiers left, and the whole major general came to entreat them to switch from conscripts to contract soldiers, to go to special operation. Major general, who was the highest ranking among you? The highest ranking one who commanded us was a colonel. Well, still, there was a major general there, standing in front of 4 conscripts. A major general, the regiment's commander, colonel, and a couple more officers. So, there were 4 senior officers entreating 4 soldiers to go to war. Yes, and considering you're here, the logical question that arises is, so you were ignoring them that way. How many people were ignoring them overall? A whole battalion. They did that to everyone. They made everyone contract soldiers. Oh, did a lot go? Here I need to clarify. The 1st and 2nd battalions were BTGR at that time. Those are battalion tactical groups. I know, with specific tasks. They were mostly staffed with contract soldiers. Only contract soldiers, in principle. So, those who served there went through shooting, training, tactics, and all that. And in our regiment, a situation developed where these first 2 BTGRs didn't have a colossal number of... They were not combat-ready battalions. It just didn't have enough positions, not enough people in those positions. And here I'll come back to the fact that as soon as I arrived in January from the HQ of the 20th Army in Voronezh, where I was on guard duty, they threw all of us into the 1st and 2nd BTGRs, just everyone. For show, I understand? To show that everything was ready. Fully staffed. Yes, fully staffed, everything's ready. As far as I understand, everyone knew everything in advance. It's just... This is how it always done there, and for real. You said you had 50 conscripts? Half of them were from Dagestan, right? No, it was 56 Russians and 28 from Dagestan. 56. That's for the basic training company. Yes, and you all stuck together like a group? No, everyone... You know how it went. Someone rushes out to the washroom. Guys, let's help out there. There are 5 guys beating the fuck up one dude in the restroom. And they say, who cares? Is it my problem? Nobody's bothering me. Whatever. So they basically broke everyone one by one. Hazing is still there, based on nationality. Yes, it's shifted now. It's based on nationality now. It were 50 of you. Couldn't you deal with them? That's the thing. The question is simple. You're all Russians, right? That's the thing. I got caught up in it too. I was a victim myself. It happened to me again. One guy held the door to the room so that no officer would come in. The other guy hit me on the head and body, but so there would be no... I see, bruises. No one cared about anything, and that amazed me. Personally, when something like that started, I stood up for people. Once I gathered people around me who seemed to be the kind who would help you, and I'd help them. Those who had some understanding. Those who had at least a hint of intellect. I see. Dagestanis went to war? Yes, almost all of them. Most of those I knew went. You must have breathed a sigh of relief, right? Or did they bring in new Dagestanis? Not exactly. At that time even... I don't know how to say this now. With your tongue. Okay, wait a moment. The thing is, only these 2 battalions went. The first 2 BTGRs that were filled from all units in the regiment. It was quite a mix. Dagestanis, Russians, Tuvinians. We'll get back to the Tuvinians most definitely. Probably the most bloodthirsty nationality in our unit. It's not just in the unit, what they did to civilians here. Can you answer why BTGRs were mixed? Because there weren't enough people. There weren't enough people. We thought differently, because we asked this question to many prisoners. And we came to a different opinion. We came to the conclusion that when someone dies or captured, if the people are mixed, you can't say their names, and you can't identify who else. No, in our case that wouldn't have worked, because for months, you see, they lived all under the same roof. They all got to know each other. Many of them, those who came back alive, a third caste emerged among us. The first, based on nationality, the second, staff members, and the third, those who came back. They didn't communicate with anyone, they became a separate group. What did they tell you? They told us a lot of horrible things. Things you don't want to believe. Let's try. There were people I really believed, who didn't make me doubt their sanity. And what did they, the most striking? The most striking story is about how our column shot at the minibus with civilians. As I understood, without warning shots, just straight away. The minibus was heading towards them. As it turned out, the majority of those civilians were killed. That's the most striking incident I remember from those stories. I'm not even surprised, you can tell from my reaction. The whole world sees those images because we have a lot of cameras. And it's visible how you shot from guns on the APCs, shooting at everything. You just run over the cars for fun. Your tank goes and there's a civilian car. And this idiot, well, not really an idiot, I'm offending him, a fascist in essence, runs it over with a tank. Did you know there were tanks in Kiev? You mean that they entered? They entered. They entered? Yes, I heard. And they did the same thing, ran over a car with a person inside, parked. Well, I'll add, I was also preparing. I was a witness as our column, as part of a combined platoon, was sent to reinforce the border. And they just crushed the civilian car. The driver of the APC simply ran over the civilian car. You just told me what I told you. No, you see, those were the citizens of our country. This happened on territory of our country. Oh, on your territory. Was there someone inside the car? He was. He survived. That's bad. A BTR ran over his car and what happened to the driver afterwards? He was already shell-shocked and all. He had returned from Ukraine. I personally talked to him. You could see that. Again, he ran over a civilian and the column continued to move on to fight. Nothing happened to him for that. Not to fight, they went to reinforce the border. To fight. Well, how to put it, we call things by their names. Yes, and as far as I understood, nothing happened to him. He resigned as well. Basically, the whole case was hushed up. I see. So such blatant cases happened even on the territory of our country, involving civilians of Russia. And what about the Tuvinians? Tuvinians? Oh, we had even worse relations with them than with the Dagestanis. We even allied with the Dagestanis against the Tuvinians. Once we had a situation during the basic training. It all started with a verbal argument. There was an entire platoon lined up in front of the mess hall. 3 platoons. First platoon, second platoon, third platoon. Here comes a column of Tuvinians, a whole platoon of Tuvinians. And between the back rows of their platoons and our Dagestanis who were in the first platoon, a heated argument broke out. The platoon moved on. A couple of guys stayed behind for this verbal spat, and one Dagestani pushed a Tuvinian. Respectively, after a while, I still couldn't figure out how one of them managed to escape and ran back to his company, and in a blink of an eye, a company of Tuvinians was charging at us with belts badges in their hands. They took off their waist belts, which we wear over our coats as per regulations. They removed these belts and prepared to use them like slings. Not slings, but these...
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, kists. And knives. That's their favorite thing. It was known that every Tuvinian had a knife.
But it's not allowed.
So many times they were confiscated. After that incident, military police with shields and batons were coming to their floor, conducting searches, lining them all up.
Please finish with what happened next.
Ah, well, a fight broke out.
What about the officers?
Can you imagine? Our mess hall?
Yes.
The parade ground is here.
Yes.
Where the evening formation, evening dismissal takes place. And right behind the parade ground is the division. The division commander is on the podium and officers are overseeing all of this. The officers immediately rush over to break it up, but officers from our company aren't enough to calm this conflict down.
The fight got pretty messy, huh?
Yeah, it was just belts and... I'll tell you, I'm a person who doesn't like to fight, who generally doesn't recognize violence. When I saw that knife, I immediately thought, I'm out of here. Some Dagestanis, even after seeing the knives, they were still...
Did they hit someone with knives too?
At that moment, no one from our platoon was injured. They were throwing the Tuvinians around like children, but the Tuvinians got their revenge in their own company later that night. They had Russians in their company. 5 people were hospitalized that night.
They got beaten up, right?
They got beaten up. One guy had his skull cracked with a chair. After that I was...
And they faced no consequences for that, right?
Oh, that's not the end of the story. When I worked at headquarters, I was handling this case. I was writing reports, compiling documentation to send to the prosecutor's office.
Yeah, what did you write?
An investigation report. I already had a draft report, I just needed to fill in the dates. I read and tried to figure it out. So, this person, Tuvinian guy, smashed a Russian draftee's head. The Tuvinian was also a draftee. For him, that was a chance to get to the military prison. At the time, this Tuvinian was in our battalion, so I was handling this case. As I understood it, after all the documentation was ready and sent to the regiment's deputy political officer, he was taken to an investigative check in Belgorod. And you won't believe it, a few months later, I see him in the unit just walking around with his buddies.
They handled it, hushed it up.
Hushed it up, yes.
Why does this national conflict exist?
One day, I wasn't afraid to ask the Tuvinians. I went up to them.
You're using some pretty wild terms.
Wasn't afraid to ask. You see, for us, are you really... We have kubrik, and we have these huts, like in prison. There's a black hut and a Tuvinian hut. Russians don't enter them. It's like, you know, those silly video games where...
Are you Russian or Россиянин?
I'm Russian. My ethnicity is Chuvash.
I see.
So there's a territorial division, gangs. I mean, there's a hut, and Russians aren't allowed to enter. Only Dagestanis can go there. If a Russian goes there, it's either because they're a local, or by invitation, or they're told to get the fuck out of there. And with the Tuvinians, it's even more, you could leave with a knife between your ribs.
Well, you asked them.
They said, we're afraid of you. That's what one of them told me, we're afraid of you.
They're afraid of you, so they're beating you.
So they defend themselves from us this way. They carry knives with them all the time. I don't know, I haven't quite processed it in my mind. It's hard for me to imagine being afraid in this way.
I can imagine how they would fight if they found themselves in the same trench.
I wouldn't want to end up in a trench with either Dagestanis or Tuvinians.
Well, I just assumed it. Imagine a trench where one Russian, one Dagestani and one Tuvinian are. Someone gets wounded, and I'm sure nobody would help him. Someone would be forgotten. That explains... and one more exception for the slogan, we don't abandon our own. You could abandon someone of a different nationality.
Yes. It even happened that the Tuvinians sometimes even hate each other. They even had cases where they would fight amongst themselves within their own caste. They would torment each other, beat each other up. Fights still happened within the caste. The Dagestanis were the closest knit and strongest caste.
I see. So, can you tell me how you ended up here?
Here?
Well, you got into captivity on September 25th. As I understand, there were these lawless situations in the unit all the time.
At the end, the castes still existed, but there was no hostility between them. Each caste was focused on sticking together, because conscripts, now they are reinforcing the entire border with conscripts. They are guarding the entire perimeter of the border with conscripts. And in our unit, people who just arrived from civilian life not long ago, they've been in the unit for 2 weeks, barely know how to handle a rifle and so on. They're already being issued body armor, weapons. They've been given these underbarrels, mortars, and then sent to the border. So people with no military specialty, without any training, are already stationed.
You're not surprising me. On the border. Do you want me to surprise you?
Yes, I understand that. I've been telling you from the beginning.
A record. On the 22nd, he received his summons, chmobik, which is partial mobilization. Next will be PMOBIK, full mobilization. He received the summons on the 22nd. On the 25th, he received an assault rifle. On the 26th, he got captured. So, 4 days. There are such guys. Well, from Moscow. Click, click. It went very fast.
Well, signs of this appeared back in April. I was stationed in the village of Mokraya Orlovka at that time. They took my company and me out at the border between Russia and Ukraine. Can you imagine? I was standing there, saw the border trench, saw the field, saw the Ukrainian village, so I could just cross the field and I'd be in Ukraine.
Spoiler alert, still a mystery. You'll all be surprised. Why?
Why? I had already seen everything there. I had seen everything, to be honest. Everything had become clear to me. My acquaintances were pushing me towards this. I always kept my Ukrainian friends informed about where I was. They knew my parents' contact information just in case. Well, and my parents knew where I was. It was that kind of connection. If I ever disappeared, couldn't contact someone, at least someone could roughly determine where I was last. Because I knew that they just might consider me missing without a trace, like most. Just get rid of my body. And in our company, which was sent to reinforce the border, there were signs pointing to this. We had a sick, drunken ensign. He was always drinking. There were orders like a civilian car was approaching. There was a case when a Ukrainian DRG, sabotage and reconnaissance group, broke through and attacked one of our posts. There was almost an order to shoot any vehicle that approached our post, even if it could be civilians.
Were they shooting them down?
No one. Cars were passing through. No one even listened to him. Although he was shouting. He kept wrecking the bolt. I'm going to fucking shoot all of you here, you fucking idiots. But no one did. Tell me about the DRG. What was the situation? About the DRG? We had 3 squads. There was a post, a village near the Ukrainian territory. We were about 3-4 kilometers behind. So, one squad with us was constantly on alert in case of any such situation. They would get in armored vehicle, go for reinforcement, and repel the attack or break through, as in the case with the DRG. As I heard, it was a DRG of 5 people. Why they brought me there in principle was because one of our conscripts was taken to the hospital with 5 bullet wounds around the hip bone area. They immediately hospitalized him. And there was no one left in our regiment to replace him. I was the only person in the entire battalion with all the limbs alive and healthy. So they told me, take a laptop, take a printer, you'll work there. And I worked there. In my free time, I would stand on guard for 12 hours, and in my free time, I'd sit and work on the computer. You essentially brought a computer and printer from your unit to the front lines, even though it's Russian territory, and I worked there, yes. This is a complete nonsense. Yes, I agree. I even asked them, why do you need me here then? They said, you do everything here, you write everything. Their vehicles would constantly come to the base carrying something, so they could have been transporting documents, or they would just take photos of their phones and send them. Nonsense. It's just that the staff, there were no people left. You see, there was simply nothing else they could do. There were no people at the staff to print lists. Yes, and there were no people left who could handle a rifle to be sent to the border. Well, can an army like that win? No. Or do anything at all. When your ensigns threaten their soldiers with execution. Do you know how many of your colleagues blew themselves up? No. It's madness, complete madness. It's a top order. There's a grenade here, and if you're captured, you gotta blow yourself up. And there are idiots who pulled the pin. They believe in that. No, they pulled the pin, and another guy ran up, managed to throw it away. And the 2 of them ended up captured. This is what I want to talk about. Why do our people... Well, there are some who truly don't end up as prisoners in this way, losing their lives in the process, even though actually it's for nothing. They told us tales for a long time about 50 prisoners without their balls. Officers. This wasn't some elephant FM. These were officers who came and told us such stories. Tell me, I haven't heard this from anyone. They told there was some exchange, and in the exchange they brought 50 Russian soldiers who had no balls, castrated. I immediately dismissed this from my mind. I understood it was nonsense, but I didn't try to prove anything to anyone. I understood that if I talked too much, I'd immediately attract attention. Who would take interest in you? Political officer, FSB, they were all in our unit. They didn't go anywhere. They were like chained dogs, they stayed right there. State secrets for sure. They'd start reading my correspondence, I witnessed this procedure. In my presence, they stripped a soldier, searched him, found everything they could. Completely stripped? Yes, almost completely naked. They handed his phone over to State Secrets Protection. The political officer of my regiment personally did this. The soldier simply didn't want to go to the border. He had returned from Ukraine. He refused to take part in any further combat actions, but they forced him. Did they force him in the end? No, he's in Gush. He belongs to the strongest caste. Dagestanis, Chechens, Ingush, they are all together. He belongs to the strongest caste. They all stood up for him. They said he's not fucking going anywhere. There were cases where Dagestanis almost beat the fuck out of the officers on the parade ground. I actually envy the unity of those people. Honestly, I envy them in a good way. I'm just trying to piece together a puzzle in my head called going to war somewhere despite you having such a madness. Yes. Did he participate in military action? What did this guy who was stripped tell? He didn't speak Russian very well. We talked with him kindly. Toward the end of my service, I was on friendly terms with everyone. I had excellent relations with all three castes. I communicated with everyone. Well, as they told it, it was completely fucked up. His brother was with us too, but they managed to take him. So it turned out they were separated, and his older brother was already at the border. And, well, they didn't go into details, they just told us it was fucked up. Like, I don't want to go there anymore, so expressively and concisely. Yeah, clear. September. September, yes. Let's go back to September. Well, at first, I tried to get rid of the idea. People still don't know what idea we're talking about. Yes, the idea, it's time for the spoiler to come out. To escape. The idea to escape. Back in April, when I was stationed there, I could see the Ukrainian village. I realized that just a couple of minutes and I knew that the entire forest, the whole field, was mined. I was aware of it. Tripwires, mines. I had seen them detonate myself. I understood it was going to be detonate on someone, on a dog. A dog from the village just ran up, and I knew that the disposition of forces. I knew that there were still several kilometers of Russian soldiers waiting for me there. Honestly, I would have been glad to see Ukrainian soldiers rather than Russians. What were you up to? I planned the escape, in the literal sense, desertion. Where to? To Ukrainian territory, meaning to do what? To surrender to captivity, not to participate anymore. To eliminate all these ifs and accidentally. I just understood that I'm still in HQ, that they still need me in the unit. But I understood that it will end sooner or later, and there would be no one left, they would send us. I decided to eliminate all these risks, to surrender to captivity, and if possible, seek citizenship, at least of Ukraine, or of any other, more civilized country. Understood? It's a good idea. Implementation. So, the implementation was weak in April, even though I had weapon on me. Spoiler, now in September I went without a weapon. That was the right decision. Back then we had both weapons and as much ammo as you wanted, plenty of food. We had gear, body armor, helmets, everything. We were well supplied at that time. There was an opportunity. I'm sorry. Pause. I got distracted. There was a phone call, so I got interrupted. In any case, you intended, let's call it desertion, because essentially this term applies to you. You planned to leave the unit, go to Ukrainian territory, and surrender to captivity. Yes, this is the spoiler we've been talking about from the very beginning, the most interesting part. At the beginning, I mentioned that my military unit was located in the village of Solity, which is approximately 40 kilometers from the Ukrainian territory, so the journey was supposed to be challenging.
40 kilometers is about a 10-hour walk, assuming you go light. In my case, going light wasn't possible because I had all the supplies. I had prepared thoroughly. In my backpack, you could find activated carbon, bandages for the escape. In short, everything was ready, including supplies. And on the 24th, I forgot to mention, I had been on duty for 120 days straight without a break. 120 days on duty? Yes, 120 days without a break. There were only 3 of us on that floor. The floor wasn't ordinary, it housed officers, including generals. In the unit? Yes, in the unit. How did you manage to do 120? In what duty? It's simply on the floor. Duty on the floor. It involved cleaning the floor. Like a watchman? Yes. For 120 days? Yes. You'd stand for 8 hours, switch, then you stay awake for 8 hours, then 8 hours of sleep. And during the 8 hours of wakefulness, you'd perform tasks like helping the watchman if they couldn't handle certain tasks. There were hardly any people left in the unit. And so I had... You must have been exhausted 120 days. We had already grown used to it. I had a very good friend. If he sees this, Vitaly, greetings to you. I believe he will see this. Did you say, I didn't understand the tone? It was a friendly tone. I've known this person since the very first days of my service. We went through all the hardships of this service together, up to September 24th. Why didn't you take him with you? We discussed this. And we didn't discuss it in a way like, you know, I was quite direct, telling him that things were fucked up. It was clear. But, you see, he had some kind of belief, I don't know, it was not something I expected from him at all. He believed in biological laboratories on Ukrainian territory. He believed in many thousands of NATO mercenaries which were already at our borders. Why? The media, propaganda. You see, there was this dialogue with him. He was in principle a person with higher education. He had higher education. By intellect, he's on par with me, in some ways even smarter than me. But the combat pigeons thing is complete nonsense. I have no idea why he believed in that. And we had a dialogue and he said that maybe we don't need to leave Russia anymore. Look, we're all united. You see, at first I listened to this and I didn't argue with him. We're united, like inside the country, consolidated against NATO's biochemical laboratory and having almost defeated it? Yes, that's it, and he actually... I'll interrupt you, but how? A person with upper education, because I can't call it anything else. There was also a discussion about 8 years of bombast-bombing. I see you're already familiar with the terminology, the adepts of 8 years. I remember how he was trying to convince me that, to quote directly, initially we were against this war, but don't you see that for 8 years, biological laboratories, NATO, so his opinion changed during the war, from against to in favor of the war. I hear of something like this for the first time. I don't know how it happened. All the conscripts, chmobiks, have had the exact opposite experience, also judging by videos that they post. Well, you see, so he did refuse. He did refuse, but because of the overall situation, he decided to go to Yakutia, to disappear from the radar. He left? He's supposed to leave the unit tomorrow and then go into hiding. Is his contract ended? His conscription. But he won't leave. We understand that, because he'll automatically... Yes, they've already been talking to us about this in the unit. They've started pressuring us in the unit, saying sign a contract now. They were already gathering the conscripts and telling them, even if you return now, you'll still receive summons, so you'll earn less. But if you sign a contract, you'll take care of yourself. You'll get a Lada Kalina for your mom. Did they tell you that there? Well, about the Lada Kalina, that part I added on my own, but all the rest, well, because the Lada Kalina is not a made-up story. Yes, I know that. It's become somewhat of an artistic... Yeah, a getaway. You packed your backpack, that's it. Since I was on duty, it would be easy to spot the absence of the daily sentry. Agreed. Well, in 10 minutes, everyone would realize. I told him straight to his face, Vitaly, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm heading to Ukraine. That's also when the counteroffensive happened, so I didn't have to. I was actually scared. Is that when they liberated the Kharkiv region? Yes, the Kharkiv region. I surrendered right there in the Kharkiv region. I realized there would be no better moment than now. Never. Did you follow the war, the liberation? Yes. Through deep state, Ukrainian Telegram channels. I wasn't subscribed to any Russian channels, only Ukrainian ones. For those asking where can you find the truth, where can you get information? I was subscribed to many Telegram channels, also to YouTube channels, Radio Liberty and numerous Ukrainian YouTube channels, and YouTube bloggers who covered this issue. Have you seen us? You, for some reason, I've overlooked. It's rough, we feel offended. We have a Telegram channel. Those who aren't subscribed yet, go subscribe now. Telegram channel Vladimir Zolkin, link in the description. Our YouTube channel reached 1 million subscribers yesterday. At the earliest opportunity, I think I'll review all the video materials. Yeah, so the getaway. So, that's all. Tell him. I'm out of here. Yes, we've already discussed this. We had a heated argument. His argument was that they'd shoot me. I'd never return home, become a traitor, a criminal. Well, I just have this view that if someone believes so strongly in something, what's the point of trying to change their mind? You'll only end up in an argument and make them dislike you. Like with your dad, right? Yeah, essentially. You'll just make them dislike you and they'll remain firm in their beliefs. Besides, I knew Vitaly well. He probably wouldn't have changed his mind. Although, in the end, he did say something like, maybe those biolabs are nonsense, maybe we were the first to attack, but still, there was something there for him. Perhaps some Ukronazis lived there, cutting off balls. Did you see even one? No. We're searching for them too. Where are they? So, you left. I understand he didn't report you. Thank you for that. He was on duty at that moment. I left during the morning formation, when there were hardly any people in the unit. Everyone was at the morning assembly. As it turned out, that was the best moment to leave the unit. After the 8 AM assembly, I immediately left the barracks and crossed through the park area where our equipment was. We had multiple checkpoints in our unit. I chose the least guarded area and simply walked out of the unit. I went to the parking lot. I didn't bother ordering a taxi because I understood that if something went wrong, they would find me through the taxi service. Well, good point. I just saw a person. We have these unofficial drivers. By hand.
Yes, you order them by hand. It was a girl. 500 rubles to Posokhovo. Enough? Will do. Posokhovo is a village on Russian territory. I cut about 15 to 20 kilometers, but it was not that important because I had to walk not on the road, not in a straight line, but bypass all the villages and roads in the Russian territory. Got it. I was walking only through forest strips and fields only. I reached Posokhovo, and from there, using maps, I had compasses with me. I knew I needed to go west. I've set the azimuth and followed it. I actually learned topography during my conscription service, all by myself. The basics of topography. I walked for 2 days, starting around 10 in the morning. I reached Posokhovo around 10. I was on the road from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. when I reached the Ukrainian border. Is the recording still going? Yes, it is. Respectively, I was sleeping in the forest, the scariest thing that happened at night. I was sleeping in a sleeping bag, fully prepared. I made myself a small camp without a fire. There should be no fire in no case. How far was it from the border? I was about halfway to the border. The next day there was another half remaining. I can't say exactly because in some areas... You had your phone with you, right? Yes, I had 3 phones, 2 compasses, just in case of unforeseen circumstances. I heard rocket launches in the middle of the night. I was sleeping. I made a bed for myself from branches and leaves. I was lying in a sleeping bag, sleeping, and I heard rocket launches. Many rockets. The sky immediately lit up. It was close to me. I jumped up from fear. I realized that it wasn't threatening me directly. There was still quite a bit of time left until morning, and I went back to sleep. Got it. In the morning, I gathered myself and managed the last part. The last few kilometers. I can't say for sure because I had to change paths several times for various reasons. Once I heard 30mm cannon shots in the forest strip. It put me on alert. I sat still for about 20 minutes, looking in all directions and listening carefully. So I changed my route from the easier one to the most challenging one, that was through... Were there multiple routes planned? Not exactly multiple routes, I had to... I could have just gone west. I'd already set the azimuth, and I had moved away from all the populated areas. I could have just gone west, but it wasn't working out, so I had to go around due to what I saw. I even saw smoke in some places. I knew something was off, and that I needed to bypass that area. I see. So, with these chaotic movements, by the way, many Ukrainian soldiers already asked, what's the deal with the landmines? In the field, I saw only one crater. I'm not familiar with weaponry. I saw a single crater in the field of sunflowers. From what I understand, some mine exploded, and I saw its fragments, metallic fragments. It was a genuine explosion. But I didn't encounter anything on the way, although I was very afraid. No soldiers, no mines, no vehicles. It was just a walk, with certain difficulties though. Gunfire, the launch of our MLRS. So, at 6 p.m., I reached the Russian-Ukrainian border in the area of village of Artelne. Many times, many people advised me the I Want to Live program.
I already had a Telegram bot and phone numbers I could contact. How did you learn about I Want to Live? Regarding I Want to Live, all my friends and acquaintances who live in Ukraine had told me about it. We continued to communicate. And on the day of the escape, a girl, a very good friend, reminded me again. What's her name? She'll probably watch this. Her name is Anya. Anya, if you see this young man, find Dmitro journalist in Telegram and write to me. I'm actually very grateful to her for many things, not just this, but also for supporting me in general. Did you tell her? Yes, she knew. I told her that I'm planning to commit this act. I didn't even tell my parents, but I didn't hide it from her. Throughout this entire war, I was interested in her life, and she was interested in mine. I see. She told you, what did you do with I Want to Live? I first tried to contact them by phone, but it didn't work, because my Tele2 operator had a poor connection, and I didn't have enough credit. I didn't know the specific reason, but I managed to contact them via the Telegram channel, just by sending a message, although I had some difficulties. I stood there waiting for the message to be sent and for response. I see. What did they respond to you? I have your application. Let me show you. I can't show it to you, because there's Igor, who will execute me if I do. Russian citizen Vasiliev Maxim Stanislavich, 10th of April, military, 10/04/2000. See, these are your details that you filled in? Yes, that's absolutely correct. Near Rubline, Kharkiv Oblast. Yes, yes. I indicated that I was near the village of Artelne and sent my coordinates. I received the response that I needed to go to the village of Rubline, where Ukrainian servicemen would be waiting for me. So, respectively, I gathered my last strength, because I had been walking since morning and I had run out of water. I entered the village. How much water did you bring with you? I brought 0.5 or 0.7 liter military flask with me. That's very little. And another 1.5 liters. 1.5 liters more. I had a 1.5 liter bottle, but with active movement, those 2 liters vanished instantly. I see. What time did you cross the border? It was around 6 to 7 p.m. I can't be more precise about the minutes. Well, the minutes. I crossed. Was it getting dark? At first, it was already sunset, but not quite dark yet. I stared at the village for a long time. Honestly, I was afraid I wouldn't make it, that I'd get shot. That was the scariest part. Judging by the fact that you're here, they didn't shoot you. Yes, I realized that I was in the uniform of a Russian serviceman. I understood that something like that could happen, that there might be no questioning. I crossed the border trench. By that time I had been walking for 2 days, and I had lost all communication. That village, that populated area, how far is it from the border? Artelne? No, I mean Rubline? Rubline. I can't say how far to the border, but on the road from Artelne I walked 7 kilometers. That's around 2 hours. And the first thing I saw was a civilian, a rural guy, a shepherd. He slowly approached me with his hands raised up, looked at me, waved me over. I explained the situation and asked how to get to the Rubline village. And
He said he couldn't help, just waved his hand and pointed out the way. This didn't help me anyway. Fortunately, his neighbor came over. He gave me a flask of water, filled my flask with water, took me to the road I could take to get to the Rublinaya village. He explained everything, and with water I set off on that road. You arrive in Rublinaya. It turns out that Rublinaya consists of several houses, then another road, and then the village itself. In this small cluster of houses, I met a girl who I asked to explain the route to me in detail, so I wouldn't get lost because there were crossroads along the way. The girl explained it to me using simple terms, but I could tell she wasn't sure I got it. She had 2 kids with her, a boy named Maxim, around 13 or 14, and the girl, 7 to 10 years old. They led me to the central street of Rublinaya. And the girl also asked, "Soldier, will the kids come back alive?" I swore to her and all that, promising not to harm anyone. They took me to the central street and roughly showed me the place sent to me in coordinates. It was the school. And... oh, I forgot to tell. I gave the boy a knife. Did you have a knife? 2 knives, yes. One was standard, the one issued to all servicemen. A bayonet knife. In my case, it was an older version from 1970, a Soviet one. You gifted a knife to children. Yes, well, to the boy. So gesture, I would say. Well, I understand. Well, and did the kids go back? Yes, the kids went back and I headed to that school we were talking about. Yes, and what happened there? Soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers, were waiting for me at that school. So, respectively, I followed their orders. I showed them I had no more weapons on me, unhooked my second knife. I showed I had no more weapons on me and explained the situation. How many times you were beaten? Not once. Were you tortured? No, they even offered me sweets and treats. Well, I know 100% there are people who surrender under the I want to live program. There are such people. There are enough of them. That's actually the story we just heard. The person doesn't want to... I forgot your name. Maxim doesn't want to call home. Tell me why, because people in the comments will ask, why didn't they let him call? Well, I would prefer to contact my parents in a more comfortable... I think that after some time I will get in touch with my parents in a more comfortable environment, privately. That's because I have a rather complex situation with my parents. With my mother, we indirectly touched on the subject that I might escape at some point. She didn't say anything to that. I told her that when my military service ends, I will escape Russia. I can't agree with this. I said that I would help them if possible. But I can't stay in Russia any longer. My father, on the other hand, believes that there is an anti-Russian coalition here, as he said, and that the Russian language is oppressed, brainwashed, propaganda. Is he a military man? No, he didn't even serve a conscription. But still, how old is he? 42. Oh, he's probably conscripted already. Not probably, definitely conscripted. Well, after this conscription, I told him, under no fucking circumstances, just under no circumstances, agree to serve. Even if you have to live in a village somewhere, live there. If you have to run into the forest, run. Because I've been telling him throughout my service what I've been seeing. He has always tried to, how should I put it, justify everything. Justify this don't give a fuck attitude towards servicemen, towards citizens of our own country. You know, I won't tell the light is getting discharged, right? I don't even mention what's happening in Ukraine, what these servicemen are doing in Ukraine. At the very least, how they treat their own residents. And he still justified it. I touched on what's happening in Ukraine, but I realized it was utterly pointless to talk to him about it. He firmly believes that there are Ukronazis here. Ukronazis. I understand, so it's pointless to talk to your father. Do you remember your mother's phone? Mother's? I can't recall it from memory right now. I could make an exception, given your story, to talk without recording. Off camera. Well, the thing is, she changed her number many times, and the last one And what's the phone number of this, Yulia? Anya. Anya. Yes, I have her number. Well, I would also like, well, at least not on camera. You'll talk. You have the number, right? Yes, I have it. He'll talk to Anya off camera. Anya is the girl who advised him to surrender. In general, this is our first time with a story like this, and I think people will find it interesting. Traditionally, our prisoners of war address their citizens, recommending them to come here or not to come here, well, you may not address. I've recorded this several times. It's not my only dialogue. Before this, it was with law enforcement, now it's with the media, and I've always said the same thing. Everything that's broadcast on our television is blatant lies. Pure lies. All the propaganda is woven from lies and hatred, unfounded by anything. So, you come here to kill innocent people who are simply defending their country. If we set aside all the ifs, I see the situation purely like this. Is it worth it? I've talked to many people. Money. I believe that in our country you can earn a lot of money even without this war. And in principle, no amount of money justifies what's happening now. I won't describe it anymore. Well, you've told enough. Yes, but again, I want to say, life is much more valuable than the money that many are rushing to earn in this war. Understood? Thank you. It's okay, everything's fine. In general, I'm doing well now. They're treating me very well. In principle, there was no opportunity to contact before, but now there is. I've had a short interview now. A long one, 1.5 hours. 1.5 hours, yes. Channel Vladimir Zolkin. Once again, what's the channel? Vladimir Zolkin. Vladimir Zolkin, yes. It should appear soon, and the whole story will be there. In general, I don't even know. Tell me how are you, because I have a complete chaos going on.
Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video, subscribe to this channel. You can also support my work on Buy Me a Coffee. Please also come to my Sunday streams. Together with my community, we are talking about Ukraine there, raising funds for the armed forces of Ukraine, and fighting Russian propaganda. See you there. Slava Ukraini!